It is just after midnight on the 15th of April 1912, and in the mid-Atlantic, 5 white rockets light the night sky. The RMS Titanic is in need of assistance, having done everything they can do to save themselves, and just 12 miles away, the SS Californian is doing nothing. Any act of support would be critical in securing a positive outcome for the Titanic, but the Californian refuses, steaming onwards to Boston in one of history's greatest examples of failing to assist those in need. But just 3 years later, karma would catch up with the Californian as it was sunk by 2 U-boats in the eastern Mediterranean. And I can only speak for myself here, but I really hope the same thing does happen to Livingston Football Club. This is the Oh No 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 podcast. I am Duncan Cameron, and joining me today for the final time this season, I am delighted to have Allan Douglas Munn. First of all, how are you, Allan?
I'm really good, mate. Yeah, still a bit mixed in my feelings from Friday night. Thoroughly enjoyed the game. Great performance by the players, and kind of really proud of the effort that the whole club put in terms of the players and the fans and everyone. But ultimately, just a little bit deflated that those useless franchise idiots for the middle of the M8 couldn't do the business.
Yeah, this is it. You do your own bit, but you can't rely on anybody else. And we've also got Blair Hopcroft as well. How are you, Blair?
I'm tired, mate. But yeah, no, good. I have to say, of all your introductions, that one took me the longest. I was like, where are you going with this? That was really good. Very enjoyable.
Yeah, I went through a lot of different permutations of that. At one point, the Battle of Austerlitz Wikipedia page was open, but yeah, settled on the Californian. Yes, so as Allan quite rightly says, this is an odd thing to look back on, because ostensibly there was a 5-1 win, which we don't very often go away from home win 5-1, but ultimately it wasn't enough. The Rovers finished the season in 5th. Partick Thistle take that final playoff place by virtue of their 1-0 win over Livingston at Almondvale. So obviously we'll go through the events of the game in due course, but it kind of ends up taking kind of second place to the overall kind of overriding outcome from the evening on Friday. I mean, in terms of being a little bit more reflective than just diving into the game, Blair, in terms of your overriding kind of emotions, I suppose, where were they at full time on Friday, or 2 minutes after full time on Friday when the other result came through, and where are they now? A day and a half on.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same place as I was when we did those percentages things a few weeks ago. Just like I felt coming into all of this that we were going to do our bit. Like I felt like the squad were in the right place to do all that, and they did. So proud probably is. It sounds really cheesy actually when I say that out loud, but it kind of is the overriding emotion. It certainly was on Friday night. Just really proud of the way that they held up to it. And I put it on Twitter. No one's responded to tell me that. I cannot remember a time ever in my time watching the Rovers where we've gone into a game needing something. You need to win by 2, you need to win by 3, you need. We've never done it. I don't ever remember us actually meeting the yardstick that is required. So to do that and still lose out was frustrating and it was disappointing, but yeah, they could kind of come off with their heads held high, and the reception that they got for the fans at the end was really nice, actually. It was a nice way to kind of end the season, and I kicked the arse out of it last night at the Player of the Year dance as well, so it was great.
Yeah, Allan, well, same question really. How did you feel on Friday? How do you feel now?
Yeah, much the same. I mean, Blair makes a really good point. I mean, I think most of us went into that thinking we probably needed Livingston to win, because not really expecting to win by the 4 goals we needed. In fairness, I think probably maybe halfway through the second half, I think we all probably felt, actually, yeah, we are going to win by enough goals here, so it's only going to take one Livingston goal. And I was I was like a few people around me. I was sitting watching. I didn't watch like on the TV on my phone or anything because it was like 2 minutes behind. I was genuinely watching updates on Bet365 where you get Livingston dangerous attack, and I was sitting there going, just waiting. So it was just waiting for that eruption of joy, if it came through that they'd scored. But yeah, very much like Blair, like really kind of proud of the efforts that the players put in, and it was great to see them all kind of going there with the fans and telling the Jobsworth, who seemed to be the head of G4, who kept trying to stop the players getting to it. It's like, and they were all just like, "Piss off, mate." It was the same. That's the same wee power trip guy that I saw taking like a demanding ID for some wee lad that who just pulled a pyro the size of his arm out of his trousers. Like it's just, it was quite funny. But yeah, it was good, and also good to see. Hopefully the SFA or SPFL aren't listening. It's also good to see Scott Brown completely ignoring the rules and being on there with the team and not waiting until 15 minutes after full time. Get it, please.
Yes, I suppose to a degree, it's a bit of, there's kind of relativity comes into it. We've not been fourth at any point. So as tough to take as it is to miss it by such a small margin, it's very different to how it would have felt for Thistle, for example. Had Livingston scored in the last minute, would they'd been in fourth basically the whole season and then dropped out, it would have been a very different feel. And I think ultimately you have to say fair play to Partick Thistle because Robbie mentioned that I don't know how much confidence this Thistle stats guy has in his models anymore, where I think 4 weeks ago he had about a 98% certainty, and then 2 weeks ago it was at 2%. Like, I think there needs to be a bit more rigour applied to this. But I think that's maybe not quite as extreme as that. I think that's how a lot of us have felt over that time. I mean, I can remember saying almost word for word on this podcast, if Thistle can't do the job against Hamilton, Dunfermline, Airdrie, they're not going to be able to pick themselves up off the canvas to then do it against Falkirk and Livingston. And ultimately they have. And you can only say fair play to that. And there's obviously, you could go and nitpick through that Falkirk game, but put the points on the board. You win the games, you win the games. And ultimately, those 3 points are no different to any other 3 points from any other weekend of the season. And you can go back and you can look and you can say, well, what about this chance last week, or what about this one the week before? But it's a 36-game season. And this is the...
I quite like the sort of analogy that, or not the analogy, but the sort of phrasing that they've used about running out of games. Because it's so true. I actually went on, on Flash Scores, you can go into the league table and you can do there's a button for form. And you can look at the last 6 games, the last 12 games, or 10 and then 15 and then 20. And it goes up to 30. And basically on every single one of them, we are top 4. So basically, if you lost the first 6 games of the season, just chop them out completely, we are top 4. I mean, over the last, I think it was 10 or 15, we're top. Do you know what I mean? Like the turnaround in fortunes in this team has not been dampened by a draw at home to Morton or drawing against Airdrie or whatever it is. Like it's over a 36 game season. We haven't been good enough to make fourth, but only because we started so poorly, and we just, as much as nobody saw us actually turning it around, it seemed like an absolutely mammoth task. They've got so close to turning it around that actually it just feels like the first 6 games were even worse than they actually were, because everything else after it has kind of changed it so much. But
yeah, I think it's like maybe just recency bias, but it does feel more extreme than usual across the whole division. Because when you look at how the championship has ended up, Airdrie aren't the second worst team in the division. Hamilton, I think, are funny, and obviously there's the points deduction there, but I mean, at the moment, as a snapshot, I think probably it's Dunfermline and Queen's Park are the worst 2 teams in the division, and they're both safe.
I think if you look at Hamilton in isolation in their games just against us, you could make a good case for them being the worst team, because even the 3-3 game, we battered them for most of it. But yeah, I think I do take your point, to be honest.
This is it, and I think that's the thing with Hamilton is actually when they're bad, they look terrible. They look irretrievably bad, and then the week after they put points on the board. Like, okay, fair enough.
The other stat I saw, our old favourite Wraith Rovers, the Wraith stats page. I don't know if you saw the one about goals scored in away games. 14 in our last 14 goals in our last 4 away games, and 8 in the previous 14. That's just mental.
Yeah, I think so. There was something you'd said in the pre-match, Blair, where you would. I think basically what you'd said was like, whatever happens, this team deserves a very good reception at the end of the game. And I think obviously winning 5-1 helps that, but I'd never really had any kind of doubts on that front. It kind of always felt like that to me. I mean, I was saying to you guys yesterday morning, Friday morning, yesterday morning. I've got no idea what day it is anymore. Sunday today. I was saying it to you on Friday morning before the game that I had a terrible feeling about it. I was very kind of doom laden. But really, what I thought was going to happen was that we were going to win 2-0 and Thistle were going to draw. I just... I did. Also with this Rovers team, we've not really been in the habit of going and sticking 4 or 5 past teams. I didn't really see that coming, but ultimately, as you say, they absolutely did the job they had to do. And you can't do any more than that. You can't control what happens elsewhere. And it's a real shame. I felt the same at the end. I felt really kind of heartsick for those players as much as anything. Because they'd done, everything they had to do. You finished the season 10 unbeaten. And it's an incredibly competitive league as well. Like, that's not... I don't know I can't imagine Falkirk have won 10 games unbeaten at any point this season, have they? Might have done. But, it's not... When you look at how often...
I don't think they will have done, because we beat them in the first quarter.
I think only... Did Morton not put another daft, 11 game unbeaten run away in the middle of the season,
possibly,
like they normally do over kind of Christmas and January?
But it's that kind of anyone can beat anyone nature of it. And it is that. I think that's true. Davey said it. Barry Robson agreed with him. It is a case. I think we've just run out of games. If you stuck an extra 2 games on the end of the season, almost against anybody, I think we'd probably end up sneaking ahead of Thistle. But then, as I say, nobody saw their last 2 results coming. So who knows? It's
the one I felt most sorry for, actually, was Lewis Vaughan. And it wasn't until I watched his post-match interview, and it was the way he phrased it was like, it's I'm gutted because I've just got fit. Like, I'm just I feel like I'm back to my best, and the season's over. Yeah. And it is that thing of, had we had a run in the playoffs, you've actually got not just, like the momentum that's carried from the 10 game unbeaten and all that kind of stuff, but you've got Lewis Vaughan who's improving week in, week in, week. And then just stops. And now he's got a summer to lose some of that and try and regain some of it. And yeah, I felt for him.
He was phenomenal on Friday night.
Yeah, he was.
He really was.
I've said it before. We talk about players when they're out for a long time, or sometimes when they're just not getting picked. Like, they get better with every week that passes. Yeah. And in my mind, I think Lewis Vaughan gets worse. Because I sort of temper my expectations every time. Where I'm like, he's going to come back, but, he's had a layoff and it'll take him time and stuff. And then actually, you see him again and you're like, he's different gravy. He just is.
Yes.
And that performance on Friday, you can sub him in for anybody. Literally any of the other forwards we've used at any point over the season. And you're picking up more points.
Yeah.
You just are. You're scoring more goals. It just improves the whole team because he's one of the best players in the division. And it's as simple as that.
Yeah.
It really is. And that wee narrative that had started to creep in, I think maybe Scott had mentioned on the show about, does he fit in a Barry Robson team? And does he? Yes, 100% he does, because he's Lewis Vaughan. And actually, not only did Friday night make me feel like that about him, it kind of made me feel a bit like that about Sean Byrne as well. Like, another really good performance from him. And actually, it suited us in this. I know we'll kind of get onto the game and stuff, but even the ability to change the shape we can do that because Sean Byrne was in that midfield, and like it was just marshalled. Like, there was a lot of demons put to bed on Friday night, I feel.
What it shows basically is if you've got enough footballing ability, you can fit into just about any system as long as the other players around you can play with you. And what Vaughan showed, like there's a couple of wee runs he did where he just skinned 3 or 4 players and came so close to getting another goal, and it was just like there's not many players in this division. Dylan Easton's one of the best players in the league as well, running with the ball, but I don't think even he has quite that same really close, tight control that Vaughan can do at times. It's just great to watch, and as you say, really gutting that it's coming to an end now. Hopefully, it means he hits the ground running next season.
Totally.
Yeah, you wonder that sometimes with these kind of injuries, like the hamstring and all that kind of stuff. Is it actually maybe quite a good thing that you get right up to speed, so right up to full fitness, but then there's almost an enforced layoff that gives you that kind of break to then come back even stronger again. But it's even just the little things. There's a point in the highlights where it's the 2 players you just mentioned, that Sean Byrne and Vonnie on the kind of the corner of the box, and it's the little give and go, and he just flicks it with the outside of his foot.
So good.
And it's one of those passes that's so good because it forces Byrne to do like only one thing, and like maybe he would have done it anyway, but because of the weight of the ball and where it's going, he's got no choice but to run on it and take it into the box. And I think that sometimes you see that the teams that build up too slowly, sometimes it is the kind of fault of that. Sometimes you need to just stick the ball into the channel in particular so that your winger has to meet it on the run. So you're just forcing him. There's no choice but to just hit it. It just makes such a difference. I mean, we're obviously, it was 5-1. We're going to spend a lot of time talking about how good this Rovers performance was. How much of a sort of caveat asterisk do we need to stick on that from the front in terms of Queen's Park's part in this game and the kind of selection policy into it? Alan, do you think that was that? Is that the archetypal game against a team who are already on the beach?
Yes and no. I mean, you still have to go and beat them, and breaking down a stubborn team who aren't really trying to come at you is one of the hardest things to do in football. And I mean, what I will say is fair play to Queen's Park for being stupid enough to continue trying to play out from the back all the time with a 17-year-old goalie who's maybe no the best at it. But, you know, I think they get caught up in their own philosophy a little bit too much times, don't they? But, I mean, you've still got to go and break them down. And for 40 minutes, they were really stubborn, and they were, we were making chances, but not too many clear-cut ones. So it was still tough going at times. So I think you have to give credit to the players still for kind of sticking with it and then going. And then once we get ahead in Queen's Park, maybe have to come out a little bit more. It looked like at one point it could be any score. Like it looked like it was going to be a pattern at that point. It was almost like them getting their goal annoyed us more than rather than like it. Times with this Rovers team, you see them getting a goal back and you panic and start thinking, "Oh Christ, how long till we're 3-2 down?" Never for a second looked like happening on Friday. Even when Queen's Park got a bit more possession, they never really looked like scoring again, I don't think. There was a couple of good old-fashioned stramashes in the box, but it was all kind of... There was nothing really good technical play coming from it. It just always looked like we were going to batter them, I thought.
Yeah,
to the extent that everyone was genuinely concentrating, I think, on what was happening in Livingston, because it was like, oh, well, we've done the business here. Let's just see what's happening there.
I think it was a very good example of the difference a decent pitch makes as well. Like, that's why, football is ideally played on decent surfaces, because there was a fluidity in that game that I think you would have struggled to get at kind of East End Park or Firhill maybe a month or two ago. To be fair, they're probably looking slightly better now. But it was a very... I think Sean Byrne was a huge part in it. Very controlled, very sort of professional performance from the Rovers. And Queen's Park, a funny side on the night. As you say, a little bit too still a little bit too kind of ideologically driven. Like, I get that if you have a way of working and you're bleeding in younger players, you want them to be able to fit into it. But at the same time, it's a bit of a hiding to nothing sometimes. Like, surely if you're putting a 17-year-old goalie in, you want to let him just concentrate on the basics. Like I found that, I would have found that frustrating to watch if I was a Queen's Park fan, put it that way. Like, I think they were kind of guilty of overplaying a couple of times, and ultimately, I suppose, again, it doesn't matter to them points-wise, so why not? But yeah, I don't think they gave themselves the best chance.
As Alan says, though, we had a job to do and we did it. And as you say, that kind of professional nature of things, it was kind of juxtaposed with the Morton game, where I felt we just rushed everything. It was like we were so desperate to get that goal that we just started going direct and putting these stupid balls into the box that they were dealing with all day long, and it was just rushing everything. And on Friday night, there was none of that. And I genuinely think Sean Byrne plays a big part in that too, but it was composed. Like, the whole game, they were just in control. And it was like, we'll be fine. We don't need to be 4-0 up in the first 20 minutes. We've got 90 minutes here, and we're going to be fine. And they just, a really, really good performance. But I don't think how bad Queen's Park were plays as much of a part in how good we were. Like, I think if Queen's Park had turned up and been really good, there's every chance that game finishes 2-0 or 3-0 instead of 5-1 or whatever. Fair enough. But we were good. We were really, really good.
Yeah, I think you mentioned it before, sometimes you turn up to these games where you need a result, or you need goals in particular, and it's somehow kind of paralysing, and it just doesn't materialise. I mean, it's Robbie's favourite example, but it's spot on. The Charlie Cowie game, Queen of the South turned up with a schoolboy in goal, and we didn't have a shot on target because it was like, it was too overwhelming. And I think that where you think, like, obviously we needed to win the game, but very clearly there was an added element of, well, if we can get to 4 or 5, that helps even more. And I've seen teams turn up in situations like that, and you just can't get going. You can't sort of create chances. Whereas the story of that first half was just creating chances. It was a funny moment, just the way my brain works sometimes. Maybe half an hour in, and I was thinking about doing this podcast, and I was like, would I describe this as knocking on the door? Like, could I ask, like, Blair, after half an hour, do you think we were knocking on the door? And as I was thinking that, the guy behind me said to his mate, we're knocking on the door here. And I was like, okay, could use that. So I will. So, Blair, 35, 40 minutes into that, would you agree that we were knocking on the door?
Nah, not really. I felt, yeah. I mean, absolutely. And it was from the very start of the game. It did feel like it was coming, and I haven't supported Rovers as long as I've supported Rovers. That's not something that you feel very often in a Rovers game. It genuinely felt like a goal was coming right from the off. I just loved some of the football we started to play, zipping the ball about, and do you know what I mean? There's a lot. Obviously, the surface will play a part. There's a lot to be said for all of that kind of stuff, but it's easy to play really good football on a really good surface. And they really did. They got the ball down. They were moving it quickly. There was a pace. There was a tempo to it, and it looked like a team that was hungry. Like they knew what they needed to do, and they knew what they wanted to do. So they just kind of it was one of the most enjoyable games I've watched as a Rovers fan in a long time. And we've won some big games where the game was all right, or we were up against it and we came through, or we came back from behind and all that kind of stuff. But it's really nice when you go into a game where you genuinely are just better than the other team for 90 minutes and control the game really well. So knocking at the door and some.
My mate had said to me he couldn't make the game. He's like, could you text me updates? And generally what happens with that is I'll send them 2 texts because I'll be like, Rovers have started really well. They've just had a chat 1-0 United. Just, but instead, it's like Mullen chance, Gullen. I mean, I think everybody except Sean Byrne came quite close to scoring in that kind of opening period. Like 2 into the side netting. Easton puts one wide. Vaughan has one that he puts just wide as well when he's kind of slipped in. I think that's probably the best chance up until. But it was just that repeat kind of chance over and over again. And then eventually the goal does come. So at the back end of quite a few corners, Allan, it's an assist for Sean Byrne. Very unselfishly decides to play the kind of 2-yard pass. But ultimately,
was there ever any doubt?
Yeah, it falls to him. And you're like, who's next to him? Excuse me. But Allan, that very much so just rewards for the efforts that had gone in up to that point.
No, absolutely. Like you say, we've definitely been knocking on the door, and we'd created plenty of chances, and it felt like it was coming, and some nice play, and it was actually, it was actually a lovely little ball by Sean Byrne. He played it
really
perfectly, perfect weight on it. Fordyce just had to swing his big leg at it, and that's doing him a disservice. It was a really good hit. You probably don't necessarily want that pass going to your centre half, but he hit it really well, and actually he deserves another goal just for the way he's been playing the last couple of months, to be honest. But it was a lovely little move, and my watch was warning me about high decibel levels there. That it was a fair old release of tension, I think, from Rovers fans at that point as well. The noise was incredible. My son even said to me, "That was loud."
And you're absolutely right about Callum Fordyce, by the way. He has been absolutely brilliant recently. I think there's been a fair bit of attention given to Josh Ray for obvious reasons. Mm-hmm. Came in, coincided with Barry Robson coming in. There's been this kind of change in form. I also think Callum Fordyce is due a lot of credit for that as well, because it's obviously where you were saying this. It's not just that. It's not like Josh Ray's come in and is making loads of saves.
No.
That there's kind of less going on, and ultimately a lot of that comes down to the organisation. But also, I think Callum Fordyce has been on very, very good form, and as you say, good to see him get a couple of goals.
Them knowing each other from their time at Airdrie must be a factor in it as well. They've played together a lot.
Yeah, I think so. But I think a measure of how good he's been is the fact that Ewan Murray can't get near this team. Mm-hmm. He can't get in, can't get a sniff, and even when he does come in and does well, he's not getting a game again. Like he'll come in and he'll make a substitute appearance or whatever, and we'll do a good job. But the manager's going back to Fordyce because he has just been so good. And when he first came back, it took him a good 2 or 3 games to kind of get back up to speed. And he rode his luck a few times, like in those games. Livingston was one, I remember that. So it was a Wednesday night, I think we played at Livingston. And he was really good in the second. He was murder in the first half. Really good in the second half. But you could see he just needed that time to kind of get up to speed. He'd missed a lot of football. But he's been really good.
I think it was a good few weeks afterwards that it came out that he'd been really ill first half of the season, had lost a lot of weight, and that's a big thing. But was it Robson's first game down at Somerset when Paul Hanlon pulled out in the warm-up and Fordyce came in there? That was his first game in a long time. And he was terrible. Like, mostly in the sense that, like, one of the things that you get with Callum Fordyce is that he moves the ball quite well. That was a big part in how well Airdrie did last season. And that game in particular, he was just, anything the ball came near him, he was just launching it away. And it's like, I think there was a bit of questioning at that point. Like, is this guy who we thought he was? Like, is he kind of cut out for this? Was there something about last season that made him look better than he is? But since then, it's just been a purely upward trajectory.
A couple of times this season. Genuinely,
as a back three, they just all really complement each other. They fit into. They're all round pegs and round holes. Callum Fordyce is just perfect as that big commanding centre half in the middle. Doherty on his right, Hanlon on his left, but they're also all three of them. Huge caveat for something we're going to talk about later. Pretty good with the ball at their feet, and they tend to make good controlled passes. And they just absolutely complement each other. I think Robson might have won us all over on the back three.
Yeah.
And
Definitely.
actually, he so when he was playing the back three, it was Hanlon in the middle, which was the most obvious choice ever. Your most experienced centre half, absolutely your commanding centre half. You play him in the middle, and with Fordyce coming in, he made the decision to kind of move Hanlon to the left. Which at the time I was like, this is a really bad idea. I don't know why we're doing this. And it's been an absolute revelation because Paul Hanlon is also very good with the ball at his feet, and moves the ball really well, and is a really good kind of foil for Stevenson on the left, and they link up so well. Yeah, and it is that thing like you say about the three of them working as a three. They really do. Like they really complement each other.
And it's not we've talked about this a lot, but it's not the easiest kind of setup either, with the way that it's kind of lopsided and sometimes they shift across and all of that. But it's very impressive to do that mid-season as well.
Yeah.
You could see that having had a summer to work on it and coming through, but very impressive kind of defensive setup. And I think that the big thing is, as you said, like earlier in the season, when Fordyce was on the bench, there wasn't really any kind of argument about it, because from what we had seen of him in a couple of glimpses, when, as I say, it sounds like he was probably recovering from an illness, like, he's not as good as these other guys, so that's fine. Whereas now, we've got two guys who we know the qualities of in Liam Dick and Ewan Murray, and they're sitting on the bench, and you can't really make a case for them. And it's nothing to do with them. It's the guys who are playing have been playing so well. And obviously, I'm sure they'll be frustrated, but the team goes 10 unbeaten. There's not a case there. There's not an argument to be made. It's just it's testament to the guys who are playing.
It's that wild thing of, like, who'd have thought that setting up your team to play to the strengths of the individual players that you have would be a winning formula? But it is, Josh Mullen at right wing back, to anybody watching, that's a disaster. Why on earth have you got Josh Mullen at right wing back? But it turns out if you let him play the offensive side of things and help out a bit with the defensive, but cover him enough with Doherty that he doesn't need to actually do the defending, and play in a way that means that Stevenson can bomb on a little bit if he needs to, but will absolutely do the defending, because he's got Hanlon there and you've got Fordyce, and like, it's just, who'd have thought? Like, it all just makes perfect sense.
So the thing as well that it's the benefit of that consistency as well. And I'm going to say this in full knowledge that me in particular, I was mumping and moaning about it in the middle bit. So forget about that for a second. So when Robson came in, I think we were all saying, like, what he needs to do is pick a system and stick to it and let guys get used to it and do that. And he did that, and we complained about it.
Well, we didn't complain about it. You complained about it.
I complained about it. But I was right in the first place. Ignore my middle opinion. Stick to my original opinion. But that's the thing, because that's the thing. Josh Mullen, I think, is the perfect example, where for the first 2 or 3 games, he's having to get used to a new position. And so obviously it doesn't look particularly kind of natural in that position. But even then, it wasn't that long into that we had the game away at Hamilton and he was man the match.
Yep.
But you get used to it, and everybody else gets used to it, and that consistency, I think, that's the backbone of the run of results that we've had, really. And it is tough for the guys who aren't playing, because there's kind of less opportunity to get in the team than there might be. But as we've said all along, the results justify it. You can't argue with the results, really.
Absolutely.
We then get the second goal just before half-time. Penalty kick this time. And now, at the time, I thought this looked a little bit soft, but having now seen the highlights, Allan, is this a stick-on penalty for you?
I'm still in it's probably a bit soft category. Like, I'd be raging if it was given against us. I think the guy goes for the ball, catches Sean Byrne in it on the hands, bizarrely. It's one of those, I genuinely don't think I'm screaming for a penalty if it's not given. Up until, the referee's very very flamboyant pointing at it. It's really weird, and he blows his whistle and then kind of turns and then like goes like that and points. Because he's in for the second one as well. It's like that's just a bit weird, really.
It's like someone playing a referee in a stage play.
Yeah,
really exaggerated.
What would a referee do in this moment?
I mean, it was really good play with Burn initially, kind of going round the outside and getting the ball over, and then it kind of bounces about a wee bit. And I was watching the replay a few times, and I'm like, is there maybe a handball in there I'm missing? And he's giving it for that when he sees Burn go down. It's like, no, I think he's definitely giving it for the high foot, and he's deemed it a kick. It's like, there's also, I'm not sure, the guy who concedes it, he turns around and starts shouting at the linesman. So I'm not sure if maybe the linesman gives that one as well, because I think he definitely gave the second one. Because the referee did take his time with it. But yeah, I'm probably still putting it in the harsh category, I would say.
Right. Blair, you were nodding along there. I think you agree with that? Louis Longridge, hard done by there?
I think if you take it in isolation, if you take that single moment in the game as a penalty, it's probably a bit harsh. It maybe is a penalty, but I mean, it looks more clumsy than anything else. The guy goes quite high with his foot, and you kind of go, it probably is a penalty, but I don't think there's an awful lot of danger at that point. It's more stupid from the defender and all the rest of it. I think if you don't take it in isolation, if you line it up against the other penalty, it's not the softest penalty we got that night.
No, it's definitely not.
And it's just that thing of, like Alan says, the referee was almost desperate to give it. It was weird.
It was a strange performance on Megadeth, to be honest.
It did.
Yeah.
Their number 12, it was a young centre back on loan, had 3 or 4 good foul, pretty decent fouls, and he still he'd had the talking to, I think, after his first one, and then he didn't even talk to him again. It's like, how has he not been booked yet?
Yeah.
Bizarre.
I think it was on holiday, by the way. If it wasn't already clear, I think this is. I'm sure it is. Longridge just comes out and he's going to kick it, and he's going to kick the ball at chest height, and Byrne heads it away. Like, he's not close to the ball, and his foot's too high. And I think that it's not dissimilar to the one we got last time at Hamilton in the sense at Queen's Park at Hampden, which was the handball. But it was a handball in such an oddly, sort of risk-free thing, if you know what I mean. Like, it wasn't a handball blocking a shot. It's just his arm was flailing around. And, with this one here, Byrne's not about to volley it into the goal. He's kind of heading it
wide. Know that.
So, if only. So I can see why they would be annoyed about it. But I think with a foot that high, if you're not making contact with the ball, and he's not really that close. So I think this one is a penalty. We'll come back to the other one.
Yeah, I suppose you have to kind of... You don't want players having their boot that high. You have to kind of disincentivize it a little bit. So, yeah.
I think
it's
it is
potentially
a penalty,
dangerous. So it's if anything, it's one of those, you don't necessarily need to make contact in a dangerous way.
Yeah.
I'd still probably be annoyed if it was given against us.
There's a kind of double-edged angle to it, with that kind of angle in mind in terms of player safety and that kind of stuff, where it comes over Longridge's head, and so he's kind of spinning and putting his foot up. So on the one hand, I think you can look at it, and I think 20 years ago, you look at it and you'd say, well, he doesn't know Byrne's there. And it's kind of mitigation on that part, where he's got no idea the man's there. He's no intent to cause any harm. He's just trying to get his foot up to clear the ball. Now, I think the interpretation for the referee is much more, if you don't know he's there, you can't be flinging your foot around at that height. If you're going to put your foot up like that, you need to know there's nobody running in, and he doesn't. Yeah. So,
a good example of that attitude changing on that, actually. I don't know if you remember it was a Champions League semi-final or something years ago. It was when Ronaldo was still at Man United before he went to Madrid, and the ball came over and he went to control it, and he caught the opposition player full in the chest with his studs right in the chest. And there was a big debate about whether or not it was a red card. Nowadays, there's been absolutely no debate. You can't catch someone full in the chest.
You catch anybody that high.
Yeah. I was going to say, for me, it kind of falls into that category of it's a foul anywhere else on the pitch, so it is a penalty.
Yeah.
But it's probably not one of them that... I mean, I don't think, had that been right in front of us, that Actually, that's a lie. I probably would have been up shouting for a penalty
Of
if I
course.
shout for anything. But I don't think I'd have been shouting for a penalty in the sense that I am absolutely aggrieved this has to be a penalty.
I was
Like,
about to
it's-
shout for a penalty in the second half before I realised it was actually the goalkeeper that had handled it. It was a really good save. I was like, oh shit, he's allowed to handle
it. Blair, were you surprised to see Lewis Vaughan turn around with the ball in his hands, given what we saw at Falkirk a week or two ago?
I was surprised to not see Dylan Easton arguing about it, is what I was surprised about. I wasn't surprised to see Lewis Vaughan grabbing the ball and going to take the penalty. No, that was like, water is wet, Lewis Vaughan wants the penalty. I was a wee bit surprised that Easton kind of let him have it, but at the same time, I think the fact that Brian Graham is a couple now ahead of him in the golden goal thing, golden boot, whatever it is, I don't see Easton, or I don't think Easton saw himself getting that. And actually, there's an element of my mate needs a goal here, so we'll kind of let him have it. There was zero chance he was getting the second one, so it was absolutely fine. But no, I thought it was nice. Actually,
Wow.
I think nice is the best word for it. It's that thing of, for a teammate, Vonnie needed that more than Easton did.
Yeah, I think that a few people have said that once it goes in, it almost meant that it couldn't really be a bad night. Almost,
yeah.
There was an element of that where it's like that's
totally
a huge positive and a huge, like Alan, you said relief a second ago in terms of like first goal goes in, there's a relief, calm down, crack on. A huge relief, obviously more so for Lewis Vaughan than anybody else. You could feel it, just like everybody so delighted for him. And I think, that's a big part of that from Friday night. You think, look, we didn't get exactly what we wanted out of it, but we did get a lot. And that was a huge part of it.
You could see actually before he took it that Easton, it wasn't even so much Easton saying, wasn't convinced by the rest of the team saying, all right, I'll let him have it. Like he went up to him and he actually gave him a cuddle before he took it. It was as if to say, right, come on, man, do it. And I remember turning into someone saying, please don't fucking miss. Please don't.
Oh, no.
But I don't think we've... I mean, spoilers for the second half. I don't think we've missed a penalty all season, have we?
I don't think so.
Easton's on 10 out of 10.
Yeah.
Which is I mean, that's good going.
Yeah.
Because I think that your chances of scoring a penalty are roughly about 70%, something like that. 80% maybe. So
I think other than Jameson's as well, none of them have even have all been pretty convincing penalties apart from Lewis Jameson.
Yeah. But that took us to half time. So Rovers were 2-0 up. We obviously knew by this point that Thistle had gone in 1 up at Almondvale. I can't remember what the score was at Falkirk. I was never overly sold on this idea that Livingston would be trying more or less on that Falkirk. It felt like Livingston surely were just going to go out and try and win.
I think it was all square at half time at Falkirk.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, if Falkirk had been 4-0 up or something after 20 minutes, maybe, but where were you? We talked about optimism levels and all that kind of stuff done the last few weeks. Where were you on that front at half time, Alan? Did you have much faith in David Martindale?
I was still quite optimistic, to be honest. I'd seen the highlights. I'd seen the completely ludicrous OG that Livingston has actually scored for them. Even more justification for torpedoing the hell out of them, if you ask me. And yeah, you looked at it and thought, Thistle didn't do anything particularly good for it. It was just a moment of nonsense that kind of gave them the goal. The stats seemed to suggest that Livingston had quite a lot of possession, quite a lot of territory. So you thought, they've got decent. Even if they make some changes, you look at some of the players that came on. It was like Stevie May, guys like that. These are guys who want to come on and show that they should be getting a starting place for, even if it is the playoffs. You thought there's still plenty of motivation in that Livingston team to go there and do something. And let's not forget, they'd scored 9 goals in their previous 2 games. There's goals in that, or there should be goals in that team. So at that point, I was still thinking, you know what? Yeah, we're doing our part. Thistle, whether they're even looking at it or not, I don't know. They're maybe not looking at all and thinking, they're 2 goals up, we need to hold on to this. But there was still plenty to hope for, I think, in the second half.
Yeah, I was the same. I thought at that point, I was kind of trying to put myself in their shoes, and I was thinking I wouldn't be confident of seeing out 45 minutes at 1-0. But I suppose ultimately that's. I think it's not the way they kind of set out at the beginning of the season, but I think almost naively, Thistle they're very, very good at defending kind of backs to the wall, and I wonder if they've not leaned into that enough. They are really, really good defence. And they maybe would have got on slightly better this season if they'd just become a bit of a kind of 1-0 outfit. Get a goal and sit back and let teams try and break them down. Doolan might have gone on slightly better if he'd leaned into that a little bit more. Right, but that takes us up to half time. So let's us have a wee break and then we'll come back to the second half. Blair.
Yes, mate.
You're a man.
Yes.
And you have thoughts and feelings and emotions.
Yes.
Are you good at talking about all that stuff?
Well, I try my best, but I don't know. Probably not as much as I should.
I'm the same. I feel better after getting stuff like that off my chest, but I don't do it anywhere near often enough. Have you heard about Andy's Man Club?
They're brilliant. They create a safe space for men to sit down and talk about the important stuff. And they do it right across the country as well.
Yeah, exactly. They've got more than 200 meetings across the UK, and it's every Monday night at 7 o'clock, including one at Starks Park.
And if anyone wants more information on it, they can go to andysmanclub.co.uk or search for Andy's Man Club on Facebook. It's okay to talk, and now we're going to get back to talking about the Rovers.
So into the second half, and the first thing I want to talk about here, we talked about them already a fair bit, but that little kind of jinking run from Lewis Vaughan, where he's kind of dancing in between the two, does that little bit where he rolls his foot over the ball to bring it onto his left. I've never wanted the ball to end up in the back of the net more. And we talked about the last couple of weeks, he needs a goal. He needs to just kind of get that monkey off his back. That's why. That's freestyle Lewis Vaughan playing with that little bit of freedom. I don't think there's many other players in the division that could do that.
No.
And that, once again, just has to be a huge positive for next season. So much of this season we've not had him. Once he's up and firing, he's just one of the best players in the division, and adds so much. But before we get back into the the other kind of the Rovers goals and the rest of the second half, Queen's Park, you get a goal back. Seb Drozd, which again I did not appreciate this at the time. It's incredible technique from this as he's going through. He's doing sort of like Jim Baxter style keepy uppies as he's running that into the box, and then
after
puts
getting
it
it
under.
full in the face.
Yeah, puts it under Josh Ray. Allan, in terms of sort of where this goal comes from, is Jordan Doherty, is he guilty of overplaying here, or is he more unlucky with the way that this kind of clips off the boy's head as he tries to play it across the park?
I would tend to go with the second, to be honest, mainly because I feel like being charitable. I think everyone can see what he's doing. He's trying to curl the ball round him to Paul Hanlon, who's in acres of space. It's not a bad decision to make. Droz just obviously gambles on that's what he's going to do, because there is another somebody else right next to him that he could have passed to. I didn't check. I'm assuming it's probably Fordyce. So there is an easier option there, but then they're still under pressure. So the ball to Hanlon takes all the pressure out of it. So I can see why he's doing it, and I think to catch a guy in the face like that and for it to fall perfectly for him to run onto it, it's just really unlucky.
Yeah, that was how I felt about it as well. It's like, on the one hand, he kicks the ball right into their player, and that's not great. But I said overplaying there. I think arguably he was overplaying for most of the first half, and it went brilliantly.
Mm-hmm.
I thought he was great. Arguably the best player in the park first half, and a lot of it was coming from that. It was taking the chance and beating the man in what would have been dangerous positions had he lost it. So it's difficult to be too critical that he takes a bit of the chance there. And then, even at that, even if you do clip that into the boy's head, that could go any number of places, and it ends up almost perfectly in between Fordyce, Hanlon and Ray, that none of them are quite close enough to be able to get there. But yeah, certainly taking nothing away from the finish. As I say, it's very easy for him to get that caught under his feet, and he just manages to keep it going. Does very, very well. Blair, feel free to give me your thoughts on the goal, but at that point, did you have concerns? Or did you think this is just a case of, that's a pain in the arse, get back to doing what we were doing?
It's head and heart, isn't it? Because my heart was absolutely fine, but my head was going, well, that's that then, eh? That's it. It's going to finish 2-2. I felt for Jordan Doherty. He was definitely overplaying at that point. It was not the right decision, and it did not land. And it was a one of them where 9 times out of 10 he probably gets away with it. But as you've said, what a finish! the two touches on the knee, and then the drill into the bottom corner. And if it wasn't for the one that we had in this later on in the second half, it was definitely the goal of the night. But I think it's probably just been surpassed. It was one of those moments in the game where it was just that moment of, are we going to shoot ourselves in the foot here? We're going to play really well. And of course we succumb to a stupid mistake, like an avoidable error. But they deserve a lot of credit because there was none of that. Right from the moment they scored, it was like the boys went, nah, it's just a blip. Don't worry about it. We've got this. So no, there was I think the overriding thing in my head was fear rather than anything else at that moment, but it was quickly kind of put to bed within a good 3 or 4 minutes just by watching how the players responded to it.
I wonder if sometimes it's actually slightly easier to do that when you've made the mistake. As opposed to if the other team score a goal that's really well worked, but they've got a real chance of doing this. Whereas if you basically put their boy clean through, it's almost easier to shake that off. Just be like, well, let's just not do that again and get back to doing what we were doing. The Rovers' third goal didn't follow on too much longer after that, which I think put everybody back at ease. We touched upon it already. This is the biggest example of Queen's Park maybe being the architects of their own downfall a little bit. But again, speaks to the bench. Speaks to how well the Rovers were pressing and doing all that kind of stuff, the whole night. And most of it was in the midfield, but this is obviously right in the front line, with Vaughan chasing down the goalkeeper and then doing well to keep his composure, as he often does, to stick it under him. Alan, as I say, we touched on that already, but that, do you think, is that just the kind of stuff that you don't need to be asking a teenager to do?
It was a terrible pass. There was no need to pass it to him. He was under a lot of pressure. He had no time to think, which can sometimes be a good thing, but he had no time to even consider he had one option, and that was to put his laces through it, and Vaughan was on him. Another example where getting that monkey off his back has just kind of has woken the beast, if you like, with Vaughan just a bit too late, unfortunately. But yeah, and you know what? He gets lucky with the way the ball falls for him. But if any player in Scottish football deserves a wee bit of luck, it's probably Lewis Vaughan. So, and you know what? He doesn't rest on it. He does, like you say, does really, really well to put it away. And it was just another really good moment to actually, it's all very well I'm getting it off his back with a penalty, but to get another goal and another outfield goal and another goal at Hampden, actually. He likes a goal at Hampden, does Lewis. It was just another really good moment. Felt for the goalie a wee bit. No, not that much, but...
Yeah, poor Milosh. I have to tell you, as soon as that went in, it was like, we're going to score the 5 that we need.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think, for whatever reason, 3-1 felt much different to 2-0. At 3-1, I was like, actually, I reckon we're going to go and get the 4 and 5, and it's going to come down to whether or not Thistle can or Livingston can do us a favour. Yeah, we did then get the fourth goal. This one again comes from the penalty spot. If this was in a game that had mattered to Queen's Park, I think we would be hearing about this a lot.
Yes.
Because this is bad officiating
Yes.
on kind of two fronts. Well, Blair, I'll ask you the big question first of all. Do you think this should be a penalty kick?
No. Definitely not. I mean, well, see, this is one of those weird things, right? So then the question is, did he dive? And I'm not sure he dived, but I'm not sure it's a penalty. Honestly, I think he goes down in a divey fashion. I think there is contact.
That's one way of framing it.
But I think he initiates the contact. He runs into the trailing leg of the boy and deliberately kind of leaves his foot long enough to make a bit of contact and go over. It's absolutely not a penalty. But what I can't get my head around is, so in Les's sexy ASMR, whatever it is, episode a couple ago, where Les was just talking like he was a snooker commentator, he was talking about that thing about referees not taking that second. Just slow down, take the second, make the decision. No one can ascertain that this referee didn't do that because he fell over. Easton turns around and is literally screaming at him. And there's a good 3 or 4 seconds before the referee goes, yes, that is a penalty. At which point, everybody in the stand went, what? What?
Yeah.
Bizarre.
Because again, he did the same as he did for the first, where he blows his whistle, then takes a beat, and then points for the penalty. So you get that bit where you're like, oh, what is he doing here? And I thought he was going to book Vaughan for diving.
So did I.
And actually, looking at it back, I think there probably is contact as he cuts inside. I do think the guy's heel certainly is going across his shin. Whether it's enough to put him down, I really don't know. I would be disgruntled if that was given against us. But actually, the bit I think is even more obvious or even more blatant than this. There's an offside in the build-up. So Gullen goes too early in the build-up and Vaughan chips it over to him and he is in clean air.
Clearly offside.
And the defender can only head the ball up into the air. Now, Gullen, I think, knows he's offside, so he's not trying to play the ball, but the only reason that defender is having to do anything is because it's being played through. That, there was some suggestion that it was the linesman that sort of gave the penalty. I don't know if that linesman is employed by Wraith Rovers or just really into Wraith Rovers. Loves last day drama. Yeah. But I think two big incorrect calls from that linesman in quick succession there. Alan, do you want to argue with any of that?
No more. No, I mean, genuinely, at the point where the referee blows his whistle, I was standing up saying, "Get up, man!" I honestly, sorry, Lewis. I honestly thought he'd died. It looked like there'd been from the stand. It looked like there was no contact at all, and I'm just like, what? But then you start thinking, well, you know, why would he? Like he was running through. Why would he go down? And then looking on the replay, there is definitely contact there. On the heel, it definitely falls into that soft category. And the referee's he's been watching too much NFL or something. And you expect him to kind of run in and give it that at some point or something. It's just very bizarre. I like yourself. I actually thought he was blowing the whistle. I thought he was going to pick up, and then I saw him point at the spot, and I was like, oh, yay, what's cool.
That offside thing's really interesting, Duncan. I actually hadn't spotted that until I've just literally watched it back while you were talking there. It's one of the rules I hate the most as well, is this whole interfering with play thing. Of course he's interfering with play. He's on the pitch. Like, that defender makes a decision based on the fact that guy's on the pitch. He wouldn't do that if he wasn't there. Like, how, this idea that you have to be directly involved or challenging or whatever. No. That defender would just let the ball. He would duck. Just let the ball go through if he wasn't there.
Yes. I don't know if it's a Brian Clough line or if it just sounds like a Brian Clough line. It's like, if you're not interfering with play, what are you doing?
Yeah,
like, that's
so
your job.
true.
That's the only reason you're out there, is to interfere with play. But yeah, because I remember thinking at the time, like, oh, Gullen's gone too early, and then it plays through. But as if you watch it back and you stop it, it's like he's daylight
clearly offside.
And
I was too busy looking at the pass. It's a beautiful little kind of dinky turn that Vaughan does. Again, that thing that, you know, there's not a lot of players in our division that can do those kind of little things. Just lovely.
Yeah, so as I say, if it basically makes no odds to Queen's Park, so I don't imagine they'd be too bothered. But you know, if that's at 0-0 in a game earlier in the season, I think there
Miles
are
offside. I genuinely hadn't seen it, Mike.
Yeah,
very clearly offside. And as I say, the defender gets kind of caught under it and then makes a mess of his attempt to clear it, and that's where the penalty comes from. That's where it stems from. So that, again, if it had happened against us, I would be more aggrieved with the offside than the actual penalty decision. The penalty decision, you can see all, you know, he kind of gets clipped. He's doing a little bit of that kind of pony trot, and he gets his feet caught and he goes down. It's neither here nor there.
Yeah.
The offside is blatant, and it's not a difficult one for the linesman either. There's not a lot of moving parts. So I would be pretty fizzing with that. But I'm not, so move on. And we'll go to the fifth goal. We'll go to the goal that in an alternate universe, this goal goes down in Rovers lower, really. And it's through no fault of anybody in a Rovers jersey that it doesn't. Aidan Marsh with just a brilliant piece of forward play, but more than anything else, it's a great ball over the top from Sean Byrne, but it's the kind of ball that you see a lot of the time. You think, that's a great ball over the top, and then the striker gets caught up with the defender and ends up having to hold it up, and he just uses his body to get the line that he needs, knocks it on, and then takes it early, and keeper gets fingertips to it. I don't think it matters if that's a 17-year-old goalie or that's Callum Ferry. I think that he's got so much pace on that ball. That's in the back of the net. And another one where, well, that's not by any means his only goal of the season. He's had a couple, but I think, again, it's very easy to like a lot of the football players in this Rovers team, and Aidan Marsh is right at the top of that list. And a lot of things went right for us on Friday. A lot of things that I think we would have wanted to have happened, apart from the main one. Alan, this is a tricky question, but do you think we should have maybe seen more of Aidan Marsh on the evidence we've seen in these glimpses?
Until Falkirk away, I wouldn't necessarily have said yes, but I think in these last couple of games, he's shown that given a bit more time, there is potentially something in there. And I don't think Barry Robson probably has his own thoughts about that. Maybe if I'd been giving him 20 minutes in games instead of giving him 3 or 5, maybe he would have done. Maybe I don't know. It's hard to say. I mean, Vaughan and Gullen have been there. Pollock before them have been. They've all done well. Gullen's not scored a lot of goals, but he's largely in that team for his work rate and his delivery of the ball. He's certainly created a lot of goals. So it's hard to say that Marsh is justified being in. I think it's one of those. If we were in the playoffs, I think he'd get more game time because he's done enough in these last few games to merit getting more time. He's arguably not done enough before that in training or in matches, or he would have got more time.
Yeah, that's actually just before the goal. He has a header as well, where it goes wide, but his technique's excellent.
Yeah,
really gets up and beautiful as well. Boy, I don't know what Aidan Marsh's contract situation is at Barnsley, but if it was up to you, if he was offered to you for another loan for next season, would you be quite happy to see Aidan Marsh back?
I would. I don't think if he was the only striker, if we were only bringing in one striker in the summer, no, I wouldn't want it to be Aidan Marsh, and I don't think that's harsh. I think he's raw and he's young and he's clearly got something about him. But I'm not sure he's the answer to the question that we have at the moment up front. In the long, like over the stretch of a game, Aidan Marsh for me, like, see if you're the kind of fan who doesn't go to every game or whatever, and you just watch the highlights. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that by any stretch, but if you're a fan who watches the highlights, you'll think Aidan Marsh is fantastic because Aidan Marsh shows up really well in the highlights. But if you watch that, you know, the video that the Rovers put out for the last 10 minutes at Falkirk, if you watch that, there's a good 4 or 5 times Aidan Marsh gets the ball and gives it away, or he kind of isn't holding up the ball quite like strongly enough or whatever. He's a young lad. I don't think he's quite there yet in terms of the physicality in this league to be like, he couldn't be your number one striker for me. I don't think he's that player yet. But does he have the ability to become that in time? I think so. Like, he's clearly a good finisher. He reads the game pretty well. He gets himself into the positions to get those goals. But I'm just not sure. Like, having watched him in the games that he's played and when he's been on, there are moments where I'm like, oh, you've got to do better there, or you're, like, it's not, and that's not a criticism of him. Honestly, it's not. He's a player that does really well. But I feel like there's this clamber to make him this amazing, we've had this great player sitting on the bench this whole time, and why is he not played? And I just don't buy it. I really don't. I think he's a talent. I think he scores some good goals. He comes across as, and actually, not just, I was speaking to him last night. He's a cracking lad. Really, really nice lad who's genuinely loved his time up here. And I would be delighted to see him back. And genuinely will, if he doesn't come back, we'll still keep an eye out for him, because he's one of those that he's just been infectious. You just want him to be successful. But I don't think some of the criticism that Robson's had around Aidan Marsh, I don't think a lot of it's that fair, if I'm honest. But yeah, that's just me.
I think he's at a stage of his career, isn't he, where he needs game time. He needs to be starting games or getting certainly a lot more time off the bench. So, from his own point of view, for his football development, if he's not going to get that next year, it's probably not the best thing for him to do. If he is, then, yeah, like Blair says, welcome him with open arms.
I don't know if this is true, because I've just made it up, but his goals per minute must be not far off the best in the squad.
Really high.
Which, when you're saying there about you watch that last 10 minutes of Falkirk and he's maybe not holding it up, and he does score a goal though. So
he does, and that's what I'm saying.
Put a tick in that column.
Totally. And that's, I'm not trying to take away from him at all. It is just, it's not just the highlights though, is what I'm trying to say. Like, there is more to being on the pitch. In that job, scoring goals is important. Of course it is. But there's more to doing that job at a team like us than just scoring goals. And the thing is, it's, if you score goals, great. And he has been. Don't get me wrong. Absolutely has been. I'm not taking that away from him. Do I think he'll do that week in, week out over a 36-game season? No, not yet, is what I'm saying. I genuinely don't.
Okay. Let's not relitigate that any further. Because I'm going to start going back to stuff we've already done. Anyway, I don't really know anything that happened in this game after that. Because as soon as the fifth goal went in, I was staring at my phone. I was just refreshing Livingston's Twitter timeline just to try and see what was happening, waiting for a goal that would never come. To be perfectly honest with you, I don't think I even had like optimism or pessimism at that point. I think I'd just sort of settled into what inwardly I would describe as a zen-like state of acceptance, and what outwardly was me panicking and jittering and my legs bouncing away and just frantically refreshing Twitter, as I say. But ultimately, as I say, it wasn't to be. But there is no, as far as I'm concerned, there is no criticism to be levelled at the Rovers for that. Certainly not on Friday night. They quite literally did the job they needed to do. If results elsewhere had gone differently, that would have been enough. And in more than one, scenario, they did more than they might have needed. And as I say, even over the course of the season, I don't think you can look at that and say, in the fullness of that 36-game season, that's really a missed opportunity. And obviously you can go back to specific incidents where you lost a game by a goal, or you drew a game where you had a chance, and you could find the extra point somewhere, or the extra 2 points, or whatever it is that we would have needed. But where, in reflection, are you left with just a kind of a feeling of optimism for next season more than anything else?
Yeah, massively, actually. I think that, as I said, if you take that first quarter out, we were top four by any other measure than the actual league table, which is the only measure that matters. But I feel like we've had two managers this season who couldn't get what Barry Robson's got out of that squad. Granted, he got a transfer window, so he was able to bring in players that Collins didn't. Although he did sign a couple of boys as well. But I just think it's like, my overwhelming feeling is if he can do that with what he's had to work with, which has not necessarily been like his, if that makes sense, surely adding one or two players that he identifies as being able to supplement what we've got has got to make us better. I just don't see how it kind of doesn't. And I feel like it would become under Robson, I think we can become a very championship team. Like, we'll do the basics really well, we'll work really hard, we'll, press high, we'll play with tempo. We've got one or two really tricky kind of forward players who can do magical things when we need to. We don't miss penalties. Like, all of these little things, it's like this kind of culmination of all the little bits that come together that make you a kind of a really good side in the championship. Because you either have to be dogged and hard working like that, or you have to be pretty, but really pretty, like really, really pretty. And I don't see Barry Robson turning us into Falkirk. I just don't. Like, we're not going to become a McGlynn side. But I also don't think we're going to become a Dougie Emery side. It's like we're somewhere between the two. Like, you'll have that dogged determination, but you're going to do the right things, and there's a bit of tactical nous to it, and there's some. It just feels like everything has had a bit of thought behind it. Like I said, something as simple as this lopsided back three, back five thing that has been, like, that's clever. It just is. It plays to the strengths of the players that you've got, and it works. And the more of that, the better.
It's really impressive from Barry Robson, because you said there that he had a window. He didn't really, in the sense of, he got Aidan Marsh and he got Jordan Doherty, but they were both lined up for him.
Yeah,
those deals were in the works already. So effectively, they were in the same bucket as the rest of the players. He was given them to work with.
Gullen's the one addition that I think has made a massive difference.
Gullen and Josh Ray, I think, really.
True. Actually,
I think you've got Gullen, you've got Josh Ray, and you've got George Gatow, who hasn't had the same impact. I think it's fair to say. It's a real shame that we couldn't get like 2 minutes out of him just for the and it wasn't the time. We never had the luxury at any point to do it, and it's not a charity organisation. You're not there to just
totally.
But I did feel for him. Just like, he's been there. He's been working away in the background, and just to not get any kind of games is unfortunate for him. But sorry, to go back to the point, it bodes very well that Barry Robson has had such an impact in such a I use this as a criticism quite a lot, and I don't mean it this way this time. Quite an ideologically driven approach. He's come in and he's gone, right, we're going to do this. This is how we're going to work. It's kind of my way or the highway, effectively. And nobody chose the highway. Other than, obviously, Sam Stanton left, but that was an inherited. That's, I think, what you would call a legacy issue. I think a lot of the time, when a manager does that, you expect them to bring in a couple of guys who they've worked with previously, who know the score, and he didn't have that at all. Josh Ray and Jamie Gullen were both, sourced from elsewhere, effectively. It's not like they were guys he had at Aberdeen or anything like that. And as I say, that for me, that bodes very well going into the summer, because he now does have the opportunity, but he's kind of proven that he can work with anybody, almost. Like, he's not going to have to go and just find 3 guys who can only work in one way. He's probably quite good at working with a wide variety of players. And I was also quite heartened to hear him say in his post-match that he's not expecting a huge turnover. And I think 4 months ago, that would have been a bit concerning almost. You'd think, well, actually, hang on a second, we probably need a lot of guys in here. But, I mean, partly, I've just got a very strong bias towards kind of continuity. I like just having a lot of the same players. I like having a lot of the same guys around for a long time. I just think it feels better. It's a nicer kind of environment and all that kind of stuff. You build up relationships. But it's a very good platform. 10 games unbeaten at the end of the season. Now, listen, we saw last year, what's happened in one season doesn't necessarily determine what will happen the next. But it feels like we're being left in a good place, albeit we would have rather that the season be going on. Alan, where are your thoughts kind of reflecting on what we've seen from Barry Robson and what we're likely to see from here?
Very much the same, actually. Kind of following on from what you were just saying, I think I totally agree in that, he's built a core of players who know how to play football the way he wants to play. Why mess with that? Add into it to make it better. I love Josh Mullen. I think he's done brilliantly in the last few months. You've got to imagine he's probably considering bringing in a natural right back. I wouldn't be totally surprised to see George Gatow come back, to be honest. Maybe throwing him into pre-season friendlies is the way we get to see him in a game environment. But, he seems to certainly be involved in warm-ups and training and stuff. He always seems to have a smile on his face, so he doesn't seem to have not enjoyed his time here. He's just got unlucky with the injury. Obviously, the goalie situation is something we have to sort out. I think it's pretty widely expected that we're not going to see Kev again. McNeil, obviously we don't know what's going on there. He's out of contract as well, so we potentially have just the 6'7" young lad who's actually not on the books of the club. I think he's still in the Community Foundation, so we need to sign him. So potentially we'd find ourselves with no goalkeepers on the books, which is a situation you're then having to bring in too. I would not be against Josh Ray coming back. I'd quite happily take him on. He's one of a few keepers out there that you would think maybe, if Fulton's not, or what is it Fulton that was at Hamilton that's third choice at Hearts is not getting a game, you think, you mind taking him in? He always looked good at Hamilton. So there are options out there. Striker, I think, is the other one. I'm going to put my neck in the line and say I'm actually really optimistic for Jack Hamilton next year. I'm pinning all this on the hope that he has the same issue that Ross Matthews had, and there was just this niggling injury there that was just really holding him back. And when he finally went under the knife, saw a specialist, gets it sorted, we're going to see the same, the Jack Hamilton that we're hoping to see. Because, quite frankly, Ross Matthews in the last 3 months has been absolutely outstanding. If there's a better centre midfielder in the Championship, then fair play to them. And yes, you'll look at like Brad Spencer and absolutely deserves his place in the team of the year and stuff. But if Ross Matthews has been playing like that the whole season, I think our season looks different and the team of the year looks different because he's been brilliant in the last 3 months. So there's definitely plenty to look ahead with a view of positivity. And something we mentioned earlier, a fully fit, firing Lewis Vaughan from the start of the season and hopefully for a full season is a big weapon for us in this league.
There's a really interesting. Sorry, I was going to say a really interesting correlation between like who has featured and who hasn't featured under Robson and the contract situations. So you kind of look at it and you go, right, so if I come in as manager and I take over and I've got a load of boys on 2-year deals who, let's be honest, I probably can't move on. So, like, I mean, at the time when he came in, I think a lot of people thought Josh Mullen was probably heading for the exit. There was others that kind of, you're going, well, will they stay? Well, they won't. And then you look at who Robson's turned to continually throughout his time here. And then you look at who's out of contract. Connolly's out of contract. Dick out of contract. Murray out of contract. Big Kev out of contract. And you go, if I want to bring players in on the budget constraints that we will have at a club this size, I can't rely on, or not rely on, that's maybe harsh, but I can't build my team around players who I know I'm going to have to move on in the summer, because he almost doesn't have any choice. If you want to bring players in, you have to let some players go. And the only players he can let go are the ones who are out of contract. So I do kind of wonder if that's, maybe it's cynical, I don't know. It's played a bit of part, because the only exception to it really is Matthews. And Gullen, obviously coming in on a short-term deal, but he was brought in by Robson, or certainly when Robson was in charge. So Matthews is probably the only one who he's turned to regularly over Byrne, who doesn't fit that narrative, if that makes sense. Like everybody else, you kind of go, they kind of need to move on because I can't bring anybody else in otherwise.
Yeah, I'd never thought about it that way, but you're absolutely right, and it does. It makes a lot of sense, and it's even flipping it on its head. So it's not just a case of, if I want to move them on, these guys will be easy ones to move. It's also a case of, if you're trying to keep people happy,
totally,
the ones who you know are going to be here next year as well. And I don't imagine that's like the dominating thought process, but definitely it'll play into it. That's an interesting way.
It's like that Fordyce Murray thing we're talking about at the beginning of the show. Like it's that, you've got. I need to make a change at centre half. Who do I bring in? I'll bring in Fordyce. He's going to be here next year.
Yeah, definitely. That makes a lot of sense. It's interesting. Just before we kind of start wrapping up, Blair, as you mentioned, you were cutting a rug at the Player of the Year last night. So the Dylan Easton Player of the Year Awards, Coaches Player of the Year, Players Player of the Year, and Supporters Player of the Year, with Lewis Stevenson also taking home 3. So you get the Malcolm Sperra Award for Outstanding Endeavour, the Best Individual Performance, which I think he's losing some points for because they chose to use the term pre-assist as part of the justification for that. And also Goal of the Season for that tremendous volley, Pavard style, against Hamilton. And Finlay Pollock also. It's good to see that he was there as well, picking up Young Player of the Year. Blair, you already said, though, a really good night.
Yeah, mate, it was cracking. The first time that I can ever remember, all the wags were there, all the wives and girlfriends were there, and it actually made for a really good night because every single boy, pretty much at some point, was up on the dance floor. So it was fans, players, all in amongst each other, and I think it's not the nicest way to end a season. Do you know what I mean? But I got the Player of the Year dance every year. I was there the year we've won leagues. I've been there when we drew against Alloa in the last game of the season and chucked it. I was there when we've been relegated by Brechin. Like so many permutations of all the different things. But for a good Player of the Year dance, you need the season to have ended, finished. There's no more games. And it to have finished on a relatively upward turn so that there's a nice feeling in the room. And this season's checked all those boxes because the boys could genuinely let their hair down and have a bit of a blowout kind of thing because there's nothing, that's it, their season's finished. So, really, really enjoyable. They just started at one point, randomly, they started putting napkins on each other's shoulders when they were standing talking to see if they would notice. And at one point, I think it was Callum Smith, had about 12 napkins on his shoulders. Had no idea. He's just standing blethering to the boys, and he turns round and he's covered in napkins. But it was that all night. Total nonsense all night. Everybody in amongst each other, as I say, up on the dance floor, having a really good time. So yeah, a really, really, really good night. So hats off to Grace and Laura and Grum and everybody else that's involved with putting it together. It was a cracking night.
Funny you mentioned that it should always be at the end of the season. I'm sure you're aware that like Falkirk were supposed to have theirs on the Saturday after we beat them, and they basically cancelled it. I was hearing though that they had something, I think it was last night, in a nightclub in Falkirk, and it was kind of rearranged.
Manicky.
Fans all, and the fans all were invited along to this as well. And apparently they renamed the bar the McGlynn Inn. It's like, you know what, fair play. Fair play to you guys. We'll take that.
Yeah, and listen, fair play to Falkirk over the course of the season as well. I mean, totally. I'm sure they're not hanging on waiting for our plaudits, but they have been the best team over the season. Obviously, they had that bit of kind of wobble at the
came
end.
So close to bottling it though. Oh man, that was so close.
Yeah,
there'll be some watching this, hoping that we'll slag them off, so they've got something to jump on. So us actually being nice about them will annoy them a hell of a lot more. So well, congratulations, Falkirk.
Yeah. I'm actually really surprised Livingston ended up as close as they did, because they just don't seem to have ever been as kind of cohesive or coherent or good as Falkirk have. So,
and hopefully they get pumped in the playoffs.
Well, very quickly, playoff wise. So we've got Thistle against Ayr. Winner of that will go to Livingston, and then obviously we don't know who the winner of that will play, but I think it will be Livingston going into the final. Can you see either Thistle or Ayr taking off them after a double header?
No, I'd fancy Thistle take Ayr. Ayr seem to have just ended the season 2 or 3 weeks too early. They just seem to have switched off. Maybe they'll be back up for it, I don't know. But yeah, I imagine Thistle will go in on a bit of a high after the recent results, so I'd fancy they would take that. But you'd imagine maybe Livingston should have too much for them over 2 legs. But then you would have thought they would have beaten them on Friday as well, so it's hard to say.
Yeah, I'm actually the opposite. I think Ayr will beat Thistle.
Okay.
I think it's one of those that I think, for me anyway, and this is the bit where it maybe could get clipped. I think Thistle are really lucky actually to have kind of hobbled over the line, as it were. I know they beat the top 2 teams in the league, and they deserve a lot of credit for that. They do. Neither performance was any good. So you kind of look at it and you go, have they got enough to keep going to beat Ayr? They probably do, but I think Ayr will be really up for it. Really, really up for it. You know, they had aspirations of the title. You know, about Christmas time, they really thought that they could go on and win this league, and they've kind of fallen away. So I do think they'll pick up. I have a sneaky feeling Livingston will win it. Actually, beat the Premier League team and get up, because I feel like they're the most equipped to deal with whoever it is that they end up coming up against in the playoffs. I've got a sneaking feeling we're not going to be going to Almondvale next year.
Yeah, I mean, I think
which I wouldn't be upset about.
Yeah, as far as Thistle are concerned, I don't know if I would agree that they've not been good the last 2 games. I think they've been good in a very, very specific way, which is just
true.
Backs to the wall, and you can't do that over 2 legs in a playoff unless they can get a goal very early doors. But I think they've picked up a lot of injuries as well these last couple of games. Whereas Ayr, I think, are getting players back. Their kind of wobble, I think, coincided with Ben Dempsey missing. I think he scored on Friday night, so presumably he's back and available for that. But yeah, no, I agree with you. Your other point, I think it will be Livingston in the final, and I think Livingston. I mean, David Martindale spent years before they eventually ran out of road, just taking points off bottom 6 Premiership sides every week. That he knows how to do it. You know, if anybody's going to go and actually do what we couldn't do to County last year, which Thistle have failed to do on a number of occasions, which is going and kind of matching up to the Premiership side and trying to kind of beat them at their own game. I think Martindale's probably best equipped to do that. I could see either Thistle or Ayr just being kind of run all over the top of. So it'll be interesting to see. It's a real shame that we're not part of that. Without trying to be too kind of bitter about it all, I think on current standings, I think we would have been better placed to make a better show of the playoffs than Thistle look. But they could prove us wrong. I didn't think they would get anything out of Falkirk and Livingston. They've won 2 of those, so we'll see. But as I said,
do you think that plays a part in Martindale's decisions on, and this is really cynical, on Friday night? He's looking at it and thinking, we're in the playoffs. Falkirk are winning this league. We're in the playoffs. Who would we rather have? Would we rather have Partick or would we rather have Wraith Rovers? Because they could go out and they could win that game and it's us, or they can go out and not win that game and it's Partick.
I don't.
Maybe that's just cynical.
Think so. It's Robbie Muirhead style conspiracy theory thinking. Jet fuel can't melt steel beams. The only thing I think that works against that theory is that I don't think you'd ideally want to go into the playoffs having just been beaten by one of the teams you need to face. Unless he's playing 4D chess and he's lulling them into a false sense of security at the same time. But I think we might be giving David Martindale a little bit too much credit with that. Blair, also, I believe you're in a position to declare a winner of the Pre-Dick-tor as well.
I am. So it's been a long old season, and it came down to a 2-horse race between me and your father, Duncan.
It's real Alien versus Predator vibes as far as I'm concerned. whoever wins, I lose.
I was going to say I don't know which one I am, but I can declare officially. So I didn't even process the scores from last week's games before this week. I wanted it to be a complete blind into it, but I did them. I ran the numbers this morning. I crunched the numbers, updated the spreadsheet, and I can confirm that I am not the winner of the Prediction League 2024-2025. So congratulations to the aptly named Duncan's dad.
Yeah, Alistair Cameron. Give him his actual name. I don't want any.
I mean, he put his name down as Duncan's dad. So
yeah, I'd like to distance myself from this as much as possible.
But what the best bit of all of this, the bit I'm most excited about, is that I can now reveal the trophy that's going to be working its way to Cameron Towers. Because it's the Prediction League and because it's all about Liam Dick, I was looking for a trophy that would be befitting of the man himself. And so I made my way onto Etsy, sent some photos to a woman in China, and lo and behold, what she sent back, what has come back is genuine. I'm so excited. It's so good. So we have, for the YouTube viewers, we have a little Liam Dick bobblehead. And I took it in last night. I've got a photo of him as well, but it is signed by the man himself. So we had the Liam Dick bobblehead working its way to Cameron Towers.
That's so
I'm not quite sure whether we're going to make this a one-off trophy or we're going to get it back for next year.
If you are listening and you want to jump onto the YouTube, it'll be roughly about an hour and 32 minutes, something like that, and you'll be able to see that.
It'll be all over social media soon, don't worry.
It's really, really good.
Yeah.
When you first kind of came up with the idea, I was like, that's either going to be really good or really shit. There's only 2 ways that's going to go. And it's brilliant. Totally. It's really, really is excellent.
And it is genuinely this thing. So you send this photos to this girl on Etsy and she makes it. And then she sends you the proofs. So the email came through with the proofs. And I was the same as you. I was thinking, oh, this is going to be so bad, isn't it? It's going to be... Which kind of almost a little bit of me was like, would it be even better if it was really shit?
It would be funny if it looks like Carlos Valderrama.
Yeah, totally. Like the Cristiano Ronaldo like statue that looks nothing like Cristiano Ronaldo. But so I headed into my emails, opened it up, and I was like, "Oh my god, that's amazing!" And I even said to her, I was like, because it was the original proof, it just had the yellow top, and I was like, "Are you able to add the Wraith Rovers badge and the sponsor and things onto it?" She's like, "Yes, this will be in the final version." So I never saw that until it arrived, and I was like, "Oh my god!" Like, she's absolutely nailed it. It's got the proper Fife letting services on the front, the wee Joma badge, the yellow Rovers badge. It's class.
It's brilliant.
What did Liam think of it when you showed him?
Oh, he loved it. He was killing himself. Yeah, he was absolutely made up.
I'm very annoyed about who's won it, but in and of itself, it's very, very good.
Yeah, you'll be and you'll be claiming royalties on that when the full range appears in the new revamped Rovers Club shop next year.
Totally. By the way, I'm just thinking about who we get next.
Well, you got to come up with the pun first and then work it all backwards from there. Excellent. Well, I'll tell you what, that's a very nice note to end on. So with that, we will bring the season to a close. As far as podcast goes, this is the last of our kind of regularly scheduled episodes, as you would imagine, that we wouldn't have anything to talk about next week. But you can be sure we will pop up in your feed a few times over the summer as things at Starks Park develop and we've got things to talk about. If you are a YouTube person, weird, make sure you've...
we need to stop slagging them off, eh? There's quite a lot of them now.
Actually, most people who, I was going to say enjoy this podcast, don't know about that. Most people who listen or watch this podcast do so on YouTube. Really surprises me. But if you are one of those people, and statistically likely you will be, make sure you have subscribed so you get notification when we do appear once we're off the regular schedule. If you're a normal person and you use a podcast app, presumably will appear there. Anyway, on behalf of everybody here, I just want to say a massive thank you to everybody who has listened and watched and commented or told a friend about the podcast over the year. It is just a big silly laugh, to be honest. And it's a real bonus that people actually do choose to listen. So thank you again. Have a great summer. We will speak to you again soon. Goodbye.